David here was just our legacy maintenance guy. He didn't write this code. He just kept the lights on while I designed the system. Those were the exact words Julian Mercer spoke to a room full of wealthy investors while pointing a silver laser pointer straight at my chest. It was 10:15 on a rainy Tuesday morning. We were standing inside the glass-walled boardroom on the 40th floor of Apex Financial Solutions in downtown Chicago. Around the heavy mahogany table sat 4 senior managing partners from Crestline Capital, a massive venture capital firm holding a check for $15 million. On the 80-inch display screen behind us was the title slide for Project Titan, a revolutionary real-time ledger engine that I had spent the last 3 years of my life building from scratch. Julian was 32 years old. He wore a tailored dark blue suit, drove an Italian sports car he couldn't afford, and held a fresh MBA from an Ivy League university. He was our newly appointed Vice President of Product Development, and he couldn't write a single line of working code if his life depended on it. Yet there he stood, flashing a bright, picture-perfect corporate smile, taking full credit for 3 years of my late nights, my missed family dinners, and my engineering expertise. Before I could say a single word, Julian reached into his leather briefcase and pulled out a thick blue folder. He slid it across the polished glass surface of the table until it knocked against my hands. "David, we truly appreciate your years of basic maintenance work," Julian said, his voice loud enough for every board member to hear. "But as Apex transitions into a high-growth modern financial tech power, we need visionary leadership. Your role as senior infrastructure architect has officially been restructured. Effective immediately, your employment with Apex Financial is terminated." A cold, heavy silence fell over the room. CEO Arthur Vance sat at the head of the table, slowly sipping his black coffee and refusing to look me in the eye. "Security is already waiting outside your office," Julian added, glancing down at his gold watch. "You have exactly 15 minutes to collect your personal belongings and clear out of the building. We simply cannot have legacy personnel interfering with the live investor execution demo scheduled for this afternoon." 14 years. 14 years of my career, tossed into the trash in 30 seconds by a kid who thought a cloud server was an actual cloud floating in the sky. I looked down at the termination folder on the table. I looked at Arthur Vance, the man who had personally promised me a 3% equity stake in Project Titan just 6 months ago. Then I looked back at Julian, whose eyes were filled with arrogant triumph. He genuinely believed he had won. He believed he had successfully stolen a $15 million software engine and thrown its creator out into the street without any consequences. In that moment, a strange and quiet calm settled over me. My pulse remained steady. My hands didn't shake. I didn't shout. I didn't slam my fist on the table. And I didn't cause a dramatic scene in front of the venture capitalists. I simply picked up the blue folder, held Julian's gaze, and gave him a slow, polite nod. "Understood, Julian," I said, keeping my voice entirely neutral. "Good luck with the demonstration today." I turned on my heel and walked out of the glass boardroom. Julian thought he was standing on top of the world with my codebase in his hands. What he didn't know was that in his frantic rush to fire me and steal the spotlight, he had completely ignored one critical technical detail buried deep inside the software, a detail that was about to turn his $15 million dream into a complete disaster in less than 3 hours. My name is David Morgan. I am 48 years old, and for the last 14 years, I was the quiet, invisible backbone of Apex Financial Solutions. I am not a flashy man. I don't wear $6,000 suits. I don't post inspirational quotes on social media, and I don't spend my day using empty corporate buzzwords. I am a software architect. My job was straightforward. Design software systems that never fail, process millions of dollars in live transactions safely, and keep the server infrastructure rock solid 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. I live in a quiet 4-bedroom house in the suburbs with my wife, Sarah. We have been happily married for 22 years. We have 2 kids, our son Mark, who is a college sophomore studying civil engineering, and our daughter Emily, who just started her freshman year at university. Every single month, 2 heavy tuition statements sit on our kitchen table. I swallowed a lot of disrespect over the years at the office because I needed stability. I had a mortgage to pay, health insurance to maintain, and 2 college educations to fund. When I first started at Apex Financial 14 years ago, we were a small team of 7 working out of a cramped office. I built the company's core back-end architecture brick by brick. I was the man who woke up at 3 in the morning when a server node failed in London. I was the one who worked straight through Thanksgiving weekend to protect our databases from a malicious cyber attack. I sacrificed my nights and weekends to make Apex successful. Everything shifted 3 years ago when the original founders retired and sold their stakes. The board brought in a new chief executive officer named Arthur Vance. Arthur didn't understand technology. He was purely an optics guy. He cared about sleek marketing videos, press releases, and inflating the company's valuation on paper so he could eventually sell it off. Arthur immediately brought in Julian Mercer as vice president of product. Julian was 20 years younger than me, with 0 actual engineering background, but he was a master at corporate maneuvering. He knew how to tell top management exactly what they wanted to hear. Julian immediately saw my experience as a threat. Whenever he promised investors impossible delivery dates, I was the one who spoke up about system safety and testing protocols. Julian hated being corrected by someone who wore simple Target brand polo shirts instead of designer suits. He systematically sidelined me, cut my infrastructure budget by 40%, reassigned my junior engineers, and openly mocked my department as expensive legacy overhead. I watched younger, less capable kiss-asses get promoted above me while my position remained completely frozen. Yet I kept my head down and continued building bulletproof software. I took immense personal pride in crafting clean, secure code, believing that deep technical competence would always win out over cheap corporate politics in the end. I was about to be proven right, but in a way that would shatter Julian's entire world. Project Titan was not just another corporate assignment to me, it was the absolute peak of my software career. 3 years ago, Apex Financial was rapidly losing major enterprise clients to faster, modern competitors. Our existing transaction software was outdated and slow. It took nearly 3 full seconds to process and record a single financial trade. In the world of high-frequency enterprise banking, 3 seconds is an eternity. So I sat down at my desk, cleared my calendar, and began building Titan from scratch. It was a high-performance, real-time transaction engine. It was built to process over 2 million financial ledger entries every single second, with 0 latency and complete system security. To understand why Titan was valued at $15 million, you have to understand how dangerous high-speed financial systems really are. When software moves at that speed, even a tiny microsecond glitch can cause massive data corruption. A single lost packet of information can accidentally duplicate a payment, corrupt customer ledgers, or erase millions of dollars in a fraction of a second. Because of that extreme risk, I built a zero-trust safety architecture directly into the heart of Project Titan. I created an isolated local authentication key node. This was a specialized cryptographic verification system that ran exclusively on my personal, physical engineering machine inside my office. The process was simple, but completely airtight. Every single time Titan attempted to execute a live data update on our primary servers, the core software automatically fired an invisible background security handshake back to my workstation. My machine would instantly verify that the code running was official, uncorrupted, and authorized by the senior architect. If that secret cryptographic handshake was confirmed, the live transaction went through in milliseconds. However, if Titan attempted to push live data without receiving that continuous handshake from my machine node, the core software was programmed to treat the operation as a high-level cyber breach. The system would instantly freeze all active database sessions, isolate the live network, and execute a full automated emergency memory wipe to protect financial records from corruption. It was an ultimate safety mechanism, the digital equivalent of an automatic kill switch on an industrial machine. Julian Mercer, with his zero technical knowledge, saw Project Titan as nothing more than a shortcut to win a $15 million investment and secure a massive executive promotion. 2 weeks before the big pitch, Julian demanded that we push Titan directly onto our live production servers for the demo. I gave him clear, written warnings. I sent him 3 separate technical reports, explaining that Titan was still in a controlled testing environment. I clearly explained that the local security key node was still locked to my physical workstation and required 2 more months of infrastructure work before it could be safely moved to a permanent cloud system. Julian completely ignored every single report. He didn't understand how security protocols worked, and he was too proud to ask. In his mind, my warnings were just slow, old-fashioned engineering bloat designed to delay his success. 3 days before the pitch, Julian used his executive master key to bypass my workstation security. He logged into our internal code repository, copied my raw software build directly off my drive, and deleted my author credits from every single file. He placed his own name on the master documentation, listed himself as the chief systems architect, and uploaded the raw software straight to Apex's live server network. Julian thought he had pulled off the ultimate corporate theft. He thought he had stolen a $15 million engine and pushed the creator out the door. In reality, he had just removed the brakes from a train heading straight for a brick wall. The moment I stepped out of the glass boardroom, 2 company security guards, Marcus and Pete, were already waiting for me in the hallway. Marcus stared at the carpet, looking genuinely uncomfortable. He had worked the security desk at Apex for 10 years. I used to share coffee and talk about football with him during my late-night server maintenance shifts. "I'm really sorry about this, David," Marcus whispered quietly. "Upper management gave us direct orders to supervise you until you leave the building." "It's all right, Marcus," I replied calmly. "You're just doing your job." I walked down the quiet floor toward my corner desk. My team of 6 junior developers watched me in absolute silence. Leo, a talented 26-year-old developer, whom I had mentored for 2 years, stood up from his chair with visible anger in his eyes. He knew who really spent 3 years building Project Titan. He knew who worked 80-hour weeks fixing back-end crashes while Julian was taking 2-hour lunch meetings at steakhouses. I gave Leo a firm, quiet shake of my head, signaling for him to sit down and protect his job. I pulled a cardboard storage box out from beneath my desk. I carefully packed my framed family photos, my favorite ceramic coffee mug, and a couple of my technical reference books. I left my company laptop sitting open on the desk, completely untouched. Before I could walk toward the elevator bay, Julian marched up alongside a young representative from the Human Resources Department. He held out a white folder containing a document titled Severance and Non-Disclosure Agreement. "Sign this before you step out of the building," Julian said, offering me a silver pen. "It offers you 3 months of base severance pay. In exchange, you agree to a 5-year non-compete clause, complete surrender of all intellectual property claims, and a strict non-disclosure agreement. If you say a single word to the press or any competitors about Project Titan, our legal team will destroy you in court. I looked down at the paper, then raised my eyes to meet Julian's. 3 months of base pay was a complete insult after 14 years of loyalty. But more than that, signing that paper meant putting my signature on his lie. I handed the pen back to him and gently slid the unsigned document straight back into his suit jacket pocket. "Keep your severance money, Julian," I said in a calm, steady voice. "I won't be signing a single line." Julian's face flushed bright red, but he didn't dare start a shouting match on the main office floor. Marcus and Pete escorted me down the freight elevator and out into the concrete basement parking garage. At 10:45 a.m., I put my cardboard box into the back seat of my SUV and sat behind the steering wheel. The moment I closed the car door, my personal phone buzzed in my hand. It was an automated push notification from Apex's internal IT system. User account D. Miller terminated. All corporate access and workstation credentials revoked. A quiet, cold smile appeared on my face as the full technical picture clicked together. By firing me and immediately disabling my network access, Julian's IT team had just powered down my local engineering workstation. The isolated authentication key node in my office went completely dark. The cryptographic security handshake that Titan required to run live database pushes was officially destroyed. The live execution pitch for Crestline Capital was scheduled for exactly 1:00 p.m. Julian was sitting upstairs in his corner office right now, completely convinced he held all the power. He had no idea that the second he tried to run a high-volume live test, Titan would search for the security node on my machine, find nothing, and execute a total database purge. I didn't hack a single file. I didn't write a single line of malicious code. I simply started my car, drove out into the rain, and pulled into a quiet diner 2 blocks down the road. I ordered a hot cup of black coffee, opened my personal tablet, and pulled up Apex's public server status screen to watch the inevitable collapse unfold. By 12:45 p.m., the sky outside had turned a dark, moody gray, pouring heavy rain over the city streets. 2 blocks away from the Apex Financial Tower, I sat in a quiet corner booth at the Oak Street Diner. A steaming mug of black coffee sat in front of me, alongside a plate of untouched toast. On the table next to my coffee was my personal tablet. I wasn't running any hacking tools or attempting to breach company property. I didn't need to. As the senior architect, I had built our public infrastructure health dashboard years ago to monitor external system stability. Anyone with a web browser could view the live operational status of our primary server clusters. Right now, all green indicators were lit up, showing normal background activity. But I knew what was about to happen upstairs. Inside the glass boardroom, on the 40th floor, the scene was entirely different. Julian Mercer stood at the front of the room, like a grand performer on opening night. The lead managing partner from Crestline Capital, a sharp-eyed investor named Richard Sterling, sat near the head of the table. Beside him were 3 associate partners, all holding heavy leather folders containing the $15 million funding agreement. CEO Arthur Vance sat nearby, smiling broadly and nodding at every word Julian spoke. Julian adjusted his designer tie, stepped up to the podium, and pointed his laser pointer at the presentation screen. "Gentlemen," Julian began, his voice filled with extreme confidence, "today marks a brand new era for Apex Financial. For years, our software progress was held back by slow, outdated engineering methods. Legacy personnel insisted on endless testing cycles, unnecessary security layers, and bloated budgets that delayed our growth. Julian paused, letting out a soft, theatrical chuckle as Arthur Vance nodded in complete agreement. Earlier today, I took decisive executive action, Julian continued proudly. I personally restructured our engineering division and removed the legacy deadweight holding us back. By clearing out the old mindset, I personally finalized the core architecture of Project Titan ahead of schedule. What you are about to see is the fastest, most powerful real-time transaction engine on the enterprise market today. Richard Sterling leaned forward in his leather chair. He was a veteran investor who didn't care about corporate speeches. He cared about real performance and ironclad system safety. The terms of our $15 million investment are very clear, Julian, Sterling said in a cold, serious tone. We have the check signed in this folder, but before we hand it over, we need to see Project Titan execute a live, high-volume data push on your actual production network. We need to know this system can handle live banking loads without a single failure. Of course, Mr. Sterling, Julian replied with a smug smile. In fact, I am so confident in my design that we will run the live push right now on our primary staging cluster. Back in the diner, I checked the clock on my phone. It was 12:58 p.m. I took a slow sip of my coffee and refreshed the status page on my tablet. The main server cluster CPU usage began to climb, jumping from 5% to 40%. Julian had just initiated the preload sequences for the live presentation. Julian believed he had successfully stolen my life's work. He believed he was seconds away from becoming a corporate superstar with a $15 million win attached to his name. He had no idea that the moment he clicked the final execution button, the entire system would look for the cryptographic security key on my disabled workstation and find complete silence. Inside the boardroom, the lights were dimmed to give the main screen center stage. Julian Mercer stood with his thumb resting lightly on the wireless presenter remote. On the 80-inch display, the Project Titan administrative interface glowed in sleek blue and white colors. "Watch the transaction counter in the upper right corner," Julian announced, his voice echoing across the room. "When I launch the engine, Titan will process 500,000 simulated enterprise transactions per second." Julian clicked the button. At first, the demonstration looked like an absolute masterpiece. The live graphs on the screen spiked upward in real time. The green lines surged across the monitor, displaying processing speeds that surpassed every competitor in the enterprise sector. The transaction counter rolled over like a high-speed digital clock. 50,000, 200,000, 400,000 transactions completed without a single microsecond of latency. CEO Arthur Vance grinned from ear to ear, leaning over to whisper something in Julian's direction. The venture capital partners from Crestline leaned in close to the table, visibly impressed by the sheer speed of the engine. Julian stood tall, resting one hand inside his suit jacket pocket, taking in the looks of admiration from the most powerful men in the room. For 45 seconds, Julian Mercer was on top of the financial technology world. Then, the script hit line 4200 of the core engine codebase. This was the exact threshold where Titan was programmed to transition from initial preload processing into full, high-volume live database writing. To protect customer enterprise data from corruption, the Zero Trust Security Framework immediately paused for 1 microsecond and sent out its invisible background authentication query. The software called out across the internal network, looking for the isolated cryptographic key node residing on workstation IP address 10.20c100.4.12, the physical desktop machine sitting in my dark, empty office. The machine did not answer. The network interface was completely closed. My user credentials had been revoked 3 hours earlier by Julian's orders. The Titan engine waited for 5 milliseconds. It queried the address a second time. Again, total silence. Because Julian had stripped out all my error-handling documentation to hide my authorship, he had no idea what the zero-trust framework was designed to do in this scenario. The software did not display a polite warning window. It did not ask for an administrator password. It performed exactly as I had programmed it to perform when facing an unverified, unauthorized live data push. It assumed the entire network was under a massive external cyber attack. Suddenly, the sleek blue dashboard on the boardroom display vanished. The entire 80-inch monitor flashed a blinding, violent shade of bright red. Giant white text filled the screen. Critical security breach. Unauthorized system deployment detected. Initiating automated data isolation and emergency purge. A loud, piercing audio alert began blaring from the boardroom speakers. Before Julian could even react, Titan's zero-trust security protocol executed a complete, hard lockdown. The engine automatically cut all external internet connections to prevent data theft. Then, it initiated an automated memory purge across every connected server node. The software swept through the primary database clusters like a digital wildfire. It wiped active staging environments, cleared live operational memory caches, and permanently scrambled the unverified ledger files to prevent corrupted data from spreading. Within 8 seconds, every single server indicator on the administrative console turned from bright green to deep black. In the diner down the street, my tablet screen suddenly lit up with dozens of red status alerts. Every single infrastructure cluster on Apex Financial's public status dashboard dropped to 0% connectivity. The entire enterprise server network had been completely wiped clean and forced offline. Inside the boardroom, the giant screen went totally black, replaced by a single line of flashing system text. System offline. No active database found. The room fell into absolute, suffocating silence. The $15 million demonstration was over. Inside the glass boardroom, the silence lasted for 5 long seconds before Richard Sterling, the lead partner from Crestline Capital, slowly stood up from his leather chair. He did not yell. He did not make a dramatic scene. He simply picked up the dark leather folder containing the $15 million check, closed it, and placed it inside his briefcase. "Arthur," Sterling said, looking CEO Arthur Vance dead in the eye. Crestline Capital invests in stable enterprise technology and competent leadership. What we just witnessed was a total operational catastrophe. Your primary server infrastructure just wiped itself clean in front of us. This company is a massive liability. "Richard, please," Arthur Vance stammered, his face turning completely pale as sweat broke out across his forehead. "This is just a temporary technical hiccup. Julian can fix this in 5 minutes." "We're done, Arthur," Sterling replied coldly. He turned to his associates. "Pack up, we're leaving." The investors walked out of the boardroom without looking back. The moment the heavy glass door closed behind them, Arthur Vance turned on Julian Mercer with pure, unbridled fury. "What did you just do?" Vance roared, slamming his fist onto the mahogany table. "Fix it. Bring the servers back online right now." Julian stood frozen in place, his face as white as a sheet. His hands were shaking uncontrollably as he frantically pounded on his laptop keys. I don't know what happened. The system just locked me out. It wiped the staging memory." Suddenly, the boardroom comms speaker chimed. It was Leo, the junior developer from the floor below. His voice echoed across the room over the speakerphone. "Mr. Vance? Mr. Mercer?" Leo called out. "The entire internal network is dark. The automated emergency protocol triggered because the Titan engine couldn't find the local security key. It was searching for David Morgan's physical workstation. When Mr. Mercer ordered us to revoke David's network credentials and power down his desk machine at 10:45 this morning, it broke the continuous authentication handshake. Arthur Vance stared at Julian in total disbelief. "What is he talking about, Julian? You told me you designed this software." "You told me David was just keeping the lights on." Julian couldn't speak. He stuttered, clutching his phone with sweaty hands. Vance grabbed Julian's phone, dialed my personal cell number, and shoved the device into Julian's face. "Call him. Put it on speaker right now." Down at the Oak Street Diner, I sat watching my cooling cup of coffee. At 1:12 p.m., my personal phone began to ring. The caller ID showed Julian Mercer's name. I let it ring 3 times. Then, I took a calm sip of coffee, swiped the screen, and placed the call on speakerphone. "Hello, Julian," I said steadily. "David!" Julian's voice screamed through the phone speaker, completely stripped of all his former corporate arrogance. He sounded terrified, breathless, and broken. "David, thank God you answered. We have a critical bug in Titan." The entire primary server network just crashed and wiped memory during the Crestline pitch. "I need you to log into the system remotely right now and bypass the security lock." I heard Arthur Vance yelling in the background. "David, this is Arthur. We will double your salary. We'll give you equity. Just bring the servers back online." I leaned back against the red vinyl booth in the diner and spoke in a clear, measured voice. "Julian, I'm a bit confused," I said slowly. "Just 3 hours ago, in front of the entire investment board, you pointed at me and said I was just a legacy maintenance guy who didn't write the code. You told everyone that you designed Project Titan yourself. Surely a brilliant vice president who built a $15 million software engine doesn't need a legacy guy to fix a simple bug." "David, please," Julian begged, his voice cracking. "I'm sorry. I was wrong." "Please, the company is dying right now. How do we stop the purge?" "It's not a bug, Julian," I explained quietly. "It's built-in zero-trust security. When unverified code tries to push live data without proper authorization, Titan wipes its staging memory to protect core financial ledgers. The software did exactly what I designed it to do." I paused, letting the heavy silence hang over the line for a moment. "You terminated my employment 3 hours ago, Julian. I no longer have access to Apex systems, and I certainly don't work for free. Good luck fixing your server." I tapped the red button on the screen, ended the call, and put my phone face down on the table. The fallout from that afternoon was swift, devastating, and completely irreversible. By the following morning, news of the boardroom disaster had leaked across the financial technology industry. Tech blogs and corporate news outlets published detailed articles about how Apex Financial Solutions had suffered a total system collapse during a major venture capital demo. Crestline Capital publicly announced that they were cutting all ties with Apex, labeling the company an operational hazard. Within 2 weeks, Apex's 3 largest enterprise clients canceled their service contracts, realizing that the company's back-end software was built on corporate lies rather than solid engineering. The board of directors convened an emergency session that Friday. CEO Arthur Vance was stripped of his title and terminated immediately without a single dollar of severance. As for Julian Mercer, his career in the corporate world was effectively destroyed. The board launched a full internal investigation into his actions, firing him for gross negligence, fraudulent misrepresentation, and intentional destruction of company assets. Last I heard, Apex's legal team was suing him to recover lost capital, and no major firm in the country would even consider reading his resume. His slick suits and Ivy League MBA couldn't save him from the reality of his own incompetence. Meanwhile, my life took a very different path. 3 days after the collapse, my phone rang again. This time, it was the chief executive officer of Vanguard Systems, the premier financial infrastructure firm in the Midwest. They had tracked down the real story behind Project Titan and knew that I was the sole architect who built the Zero Trust engine. They didn't offer me a legacy maintenance job. They offered me the position of Chief Infrastructure Officer, complete with full authority over their entire engineering division, double my previous salary, and a substantial equity stake in the company. Today, 6 months after I walked out of Apex Financial, I sit on my back porch on a quiet summer evening with my wife, Sarah. Our son Mark and daughter Emily are thriving in college, and their tuition accounts are fully funded for the remainder of their degrees. I wake up every morning working alongside a team of brilliant engineers who respect real competence, integrity, and hard work. Looking back, I don't feel anger toward Julian Mercer or Arthur Vance. Men like them exist in almost every corporate building in the world. They believe that slick presentations, loud titles, and stolen credit can permanently replace genuine skill. But in software and in life, reality always wins in the end. You can pretend to build a skyscraper, but if you don't know how to lay the foundation, the entire structure will collapse the moment the storm hits.